Hello and welcome, this is AlchemistExe, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the banners for like a second, and then I want to talk about Zain, and then I'm going to follow up a little bit of some of the stuff I talked about in the previous video about the state of the game, and then also the most recent community post I made about the layoffs and the shutting down Studio FGG. So I'll start with the banners because that's going to be the fastest thing. I just save your gems. I just don't think there's anything really worthwhile. It's all Taga movie stuff. If you're really big into the Dark Phantoms, that stuff is not limited to the duration of this collab. So it's not like Phantom of the Kill. Like if you want Phantom of the Kill stuff, it has to be in session. For this rerun, it doesn't matter. You can get them anytime. I've had Zain myself for a long time. And I've gotten the Dark Phantoms, just their first gotcha memento, just randomly off of other banners. So I just wouldn't bother. Just keep discount tickets, see what else happens this month. Maybe you'll get a good use for them, maybe not. But either way, I would definitely hold on to your gems for now. The second thing that I wanted to talk about was Zain, and mostly because he is a free unit available via challenge board. All you have to do is do some of the quests for the movie event, and then you can get him. They are not giving away shards unless enough people do like some Twitter campaign for liking / retweeting, then they would give away 375. I don't worry about that too much. He is EX farmable, so if you really want to raise him, there is going to be that as an option. If you're anything like me, I'd had plenty of shards. I got him earlier than I actually thought that I had. I've had him for a really long time, and I must have pulled some large dupes because when I was looking at my shards for him after clearing out the challenge board, I had 808, which was surprising. But I took the opportunity to go ahead and max all of his gates. I didn't have very high expectations at the time. I was just doing it just purely for experiment's sake, just to see what he's like now that he is classed as a free unit. I'm wondering like what can he provide to an account, and I have to admit, he exceeded my expectations in some ways. Like, he's not an exceptional unit. His damage is very like okay, even in the situation where he is designed to thrive, which is like damage versus humans and defense versus humans. It's not amazing damage. Now the defense part, he is a fairly tanky unit, which is always nice for a dark elemented character. But definitely his damage by itself is nothing too crazy. However, there are a couple of ways to help with that. That is having good support units like Melville, who can buff all of his stats because you want to buff both P attack and M attack. Or if you have units like Dios Link, who just passively provides buffs to light and dark units, and then also adds a snowball with that second memento. There are ways to augment his damage. If you have Riza, for example, there's things I like about his kit quite a bit. One, he can veil himself. So if you are running a level, as long as it's not too crazy hell map and you're soloing in multiplay, but in your chief concern above survival is just CC, then he can take care of himself, which is nice. He's also hard to kill. He increases his max HP. He's got native regen. So while he doesn't dish a ton without really going out of your way, he is good at surviving. And then second, or I don't know what number I'm in actually, just next thing on the list is that he has both magical and physical attacks, which can be good when it comes to barriers, resistances, etc. He's able to switch it up. And so overall, there's really nothing too amazing, but he's the kind of unit where the game just threw stuff at you and you just have tons of shards. You got more dark shards or more rainbow shards than you really know what to do with. Like, let's say next reset Ouroboros is somehow obtainable, you end up pulling Ouroboros. If you'd still have enough to be able to raise her or another dark unit that's high priority, like maybe Lindrake, if you don't have him already, then I'd hold on to your shards and not raise him. But if shards aren't a concern, you might want to think about it if the utility of his kit is something that could help you out. I had a lot of fun. I had totally forgotten about this series of stages, the stages where you can get the alchemical resistance gears. I don't even know if I'm ever going to use these things because most of the time my character's gears are completely tied up in like VCRs / event weapons. Speaking of, in the case of Zain, all of the gears that you can get for him, not counting the VCR from the gotcha movie memento, all the other ones are free and farmable, which is another point in his favor. But I ended up doing all 4 of the stages with this exact party of Dark Zain, Rado, Melville, and Claybone. It was a lot of fun. I mean, definitely not the most optimal way to do it, but it was perfectly fine. And Zain himself especially was just never in any danger. So yeah, it was a nice thing to do when I couldn't sleep, and so I did that. I will say this about him though: if your expectations and hopes are revolving around PvP, then absolutely not. I don't think he's gonna work in PvP just because his kit is just too outdated. And as nice as strong versus humans, both offensively and defensively, are going to be, that's just not going to mesh well with power creep. And then especially that you have dragons to worry about, like Ovinius would make short work of him easily. So I definitely think of him as a PvE unit that could potentially help you out if you have a need that is both dark and slash and possibly Envilia. So yeah, that's it for my Dark Zain talk. Next up is the stuff about Gumi / Studio FGG, their layoffs. So as I mentioned in that community post, they had a large amount of layoffs. They had a very bad year. And there's two things that mostly caused this, and it was their two new IP big projects. They had a sequel to Shinobi Nightmare. That's where like the Sakura and some of those other units that they often were with Phantom of the Kill, but it's a different game entirely back in the global days. They had that game that was called Sakura Ignoramus, which funny name, but that game died in like a month. So that was like 3 years of development completely down the drain. Now I don't know exactly why this happened. I've heard that like people didn't really like the 3D graphics of it. More than anything, it was probably a marketing thing where they just didn't get enough exposure, not enough momentum in the outset, because that early stage of building hype for the game and then having lots of people rush in, ideally you want to bring in new players and get people, really give them incentives to play the game, and then hopefully, take the free-to-plays, try to convert them into light spenders, convert the light spenders into whales, etc. And it sounds like it just completely fell on its face, so it couldn't build the momentum it needed. And then it might have been the timing of its release too, but they decided to write it off as a loss, which is incredibly unfortunate, incredibly wasteful, because that means that there will never be anything for that, just because of how that works legally for the write-off. They can't like sell the assets, they can't use the assets, so it's just gone down the drain just to make some of their projections look a little bit better by writing them off as losses. And then in the case of Aster Tarticus, it's a little bit more complicated, but most recently they had a very bad month in May where their revenue was 150K about, according to GachaRevenue.com. And that's coming down from an 800K month. And I'm assuming that some of the high spikes in revenue they had over the past couple of months were due to the Demon Slayer collaboration, because collabs are always good for that. And it sounds like once the collaboration ended, it just kind of tanked. And there was also some fiasco with the ending of Phantom of the Kill and like having a special Tearfing version, but they didn't announce it until after the deadline for it was over. So naturally people were not too happy about that. And then I've heard a lot of other issues with it. Like, I did enjoy my time with it, but I might have gotten to a point where it stopped being fun had I played longer. I'm not really sure. It sounds like it had an identity crisis about whether it was a mobile game wanting to be a console game. I've heard that some of the later stage fights get really, really long. And like having an hour-long battle on a mobile game is not very good. It sounds like if it had gotten like a Steam release, it might have been more successful. And then the story, I've heard mixed things on the story. I've heard it's good, I've heard it's bad, not really sure. I translated lines here and there, but was really only getting the gist of it, so I can't really comment on that. Some of the systems seemed a little bit convoluted, but overall I didn't have any too bad issues. I translated here and there. I thought it was okay, but nothing amazing. Now, one thing I can comment on is I thought the gacha system was bad. Like a, 3% rate with a 200 hard pity that doesn't transfer from limited banner to limited banner, that's living in the past. Like that's a garbage system. I think Hoyo has set the standard for what gacha and hard pity should be, and anybody who's trying to be stingier than that, I don't think it's going to work out well. And that's not even getting into the other banner style they had that were paid only. Of course, that's a common Gumi problem where they have this issue where they have just this very big discrepancy between paid banners and normal currency banners. You can see that in Tagatame right now. The ratio of paid banners to regular banners is often very, very skewed. So yeah, that's all the things that I wanted to talk about as far as that goes. And then lastly, it was requested by someone that I do an updated tier list video, and that is something that I'm working on. It's going to be more complicated than how it would be for a game like Genshin or Star Rail, because those are going to be a lot more linear as far as that goes, whereas there's more potential use cases for units based on the different contexts, and you can also get units easier potentially than in those games, but that is a work in progress. So that is the end of this video. So if you are summoning, good luck. I hope you're not though, and I will see you all next time.